Aburu Aboye, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are watching from. Welcome to another Ifa Temple Service broadcast. My name is Baba Anthony, and I'd like to welcome you to our temple service for Comrades of the Temple here in Miami, Florida. So let us discuss today's topic and get right into our sermon. Today's topic is Ori at peace, protecting our destiny through calmness. Last week, we discussed the importance of Ori, our inner head, our destiny, and our guiding force. Today, I want to expand on that discussion by focusing on something that can weaken or even break our connection to Ori. This is uncontrolled anger. In Ifa, among the Orisha devotees, we have a term that we use called Omoluabi, which means the child of the Lord of good character. If you could have guessed, the Lord of good character is Olodumare. And to be called Omoluabi within our tradition, within our practice, is one of the highest compliments that a devotee can receive. If we think about the Odu of Orangumeji, if we think about the Odu of Orangumeji, we need to think about the verse, and this is what we use, one of the verses we use in our morning prayers, where it says, the king who molds our character is a name given to Olodumare, right? So we have to understand that tie-in. Now, I've shared this, I believe, on many other occasions, temple services, that in order to be Omoluabi, we have to focus on the 8 tenets of Ifa, which are, we'll call on the rope of life. The 8 tenets sort of represent the 8 shells or seeds of the Opwele chain. Now, those tenets are honesty, truthfulness, understanding, benevolence, patience, hopefulness, humility, and dedication. Ifa teaches us that this rope is extremely, extremely fragile. Let us look at the Odu of Oyeku Logbe. We shall continue to handle it with caution, the awo of meekness and gentleness. This was the declaration of Ifa to Orunmila when the rope of life was to be handed to him. He was advised to offer a bow. He complied. Now, let us pull the rope of life carefully. Let us pull the rope of life gently. If the world breaks, there is no mender. Let us handle the rope of life carefully. This rope can oftentimes be frayed or even snapped when we allowed negative aspects or negative qualities into our life, right? We have to think about hatred, anger, wickedness, envy, intolerance, pride, greed, and selfishness. Those are the opposites of the 8 tenets that I gave you earlier. Now, one of the most common ones that I see within society, right? One of the most common negative aspects I see within society is anger, and it's often the most dangerous, right? How many times have you been in public? Have you either experienced wanting to curse someone out, or you've seen the cursing happening, and then it manifests into physical anger, physical behavior, right? So it starts off by simply the inside, the person feels heated that something was wrong or something wrong done to them. Then they let that boil out into themselves cursing each other out in their cars, to then all of a sudden using their cars as weapons against each other. It's crazy. The same thing within our politics, right? You're either one side or the other side. Majority saying, right? There's definitely independent voters or independent, other parties, whatever that may be, but it seems the dominant aspect of our government always seems to be one or the other, Democrat or Republican. So we see anger there, terrible words coming out. Now, one of the things I want us to consider is this: anger can burn hotter than fire, right? But unlike fire, it often destroys the one who carries it before it harms anyone else. Right? And we can think about that. Well, how many times have we've heard about someone, a crime of passion, a crime of passion or anger. Someone is upset with what someone has said or done, and they end up letting it manifest into physical harm against another person. And then they have to live with a decision that they made out of anger, right? The person is getting burned worse than fire because it's destroying relationships or it's pulling people off of their path, right? Their good path is now broken and torn apart. So we hope that is not the case for folks, but that is something we certainly have to think about. Now, some questions I want you to be thinking about as we move through this temple service are: how can we as devotees of Ifa recognize anger, right? How do we understand its dangers and use our wisdom to move past it? Because if we're not able to move past it, then we're going to end up destroying our own good destiny. So I'd like us to think about one, what is the definition of anger? Anger is a bitter, violent feeling towards others, often based on real or imagined reasons. It can grow until it shapes our words, our choices, and ultimately our destiny. So, what does Ifa say about anger? I don't know if you've heard this verse before. If you haven't, I'm going to share it with you now. This comes from the Odu of Idin Agada, otherwise known as Odi Ogunda. Odi on the right and Ogunda on the left. Ashe. The fire used the pot as a cover and moved very close to the water. These were Ifa's declarations to Orunmila when he was going to become the husband of the woman with a very fragile destiny. Orunmila, if someone's destiny is too fragile, it is their mouth that causes them to slip and fall. If someone's destiny is too fragile, it is their mouth that causes them to slip and fall. This verse of Ifa warns us that many times people can destroy their own good destiny, and the destruction is not caused by external enemies, but because of the words that they use, born out of anger. We have to understand that harsh words can ruin relationships, it can ruin opportunities, and it can ruin blessings. I think about, I'm in the professional world, as I'm sure many of you are. How many times have you ever seen someone successfully curse out their boss, curse out their spouse, curse out their best friend, and that relationship is perfectly fine? Maybe very, very few times we can probably say, okay, yeah, maybe I've seen a situation like that. But I'm just trying to think of a majority of times, right? If we think about those situations, whether it be in the movies, real life, whatever it may be, when we see that situation, when we see those challenges, we often see that those relationships are pushed beyond repair. That is a challenge that we have to deal with. So, as devotees, we have to make sure that we work to not get ourselves to that point, right? Now, let's go to a story within the Odu Ifa from Iwori Meiji that talks about how anger destroyed the lives and the destiny of these two particular characters. Okay, from the Odu of Iwori Meiji. To see is to say, not to say is a sin. If you continue to speak out without relenting, it will appear that you are the one behind their misfortunes. These were Ifa's declarations to Ekun, the leopard, and to Ikoko, the hyena. as they planned wickedness against Obuko, the goat, the he goat. All right. So we have this story of Obuko and Ikoko. Now, these two particular characters in this story were very, very angry and lived a life of misfortune against others, right? They had lived a life filled with challenges. Like you could pretty much say that their goal was simply to destroy others. It wasn't to do good, it wasn't to help, it was simply to destroy others. Because of that, they didn't keep too many friends around, right? They weren't going out and having parties and everybody hanging out together because they were causing quite some harm to each other. Now, Buko, again, which means the he goat, would always be calling out Ekun and Ikoko, right? Would always be saying, "Hey, look at these two acting crazy. Look at these two doing wrong and destroying the community. Look at these two causing issues." Now, because of the way that Obuko had spoken out, he faced some challenges. He had now turned both Ekun and Ikoko into enemies. Right? Because those two had decided to be enemies, they had actually decided, you know what, let's get Obuko back. Let's make sure that he falls. So they focused all their energy on to Obuko. So what they did, and Obuko happened to be a farmer. So Ikoko and Ekun decided that they would move in and start farming on both sides of Obuko. So one enemy here, one enemy here. Now, as they uh, moved in and started doing their thing, they would get together and commiserate. They'd be watching and seeing what was going on. In order to cement their plan, they actually went to see an Awo. And the Awo had told them, um, what you really need to do for yourselves, do if a word Meiji comes out, what you really need to do for yourselves is you need to be truthful and you need to be honest. And they were also told that they needed to change their character so that they were not in a position to be doing evil, saying evil, or thinking evil of others. Right? They were told that they needed to bring calmness to their minds and understand that they've done a lot of negative things in their life and they needed to make those changes in their life so that they continue to work towards the good destiny that was possible for them. Well, they heard the Awo, but they didn't quite listen. They were actually kind of upset. They were just like, you know what? We don't need to hear this. We're going to take them out ourselves and we're going to be very successful. Now, what is really, really interesting is that Obuko had also went to see uh, an Awo, and he had the same Odu cast from, and he heard the same information. He was told, and the difference was is that Obuko was told that um, while he pointed out who was doing the negative things, he simply just needed to say it once and then move on. Everybody else would see the challenges of those who were causing destruction to the community. He didn't need to keep saying it over and over again. He needed to offer a bow, and this very specific bow was that he needed to take an offering of meat and place it outside of his home. So he did this. He offered his abo. He heard the advice. He was told to stay home for, I think, about 7 days. So as time goes on, the Ikoko, I believe it was first, had come over to sort of check on Obuko to see where he was in his day. And he found this meat. And he's like, that meat looks good. So Ikoko decides to start eating the meat. Now here comes Ekun coming to check in on Ikoko to see what he's up to, and he thought that Ikoko had already killed Obuko, and that's what he was eating. He's like, and then he got enraged and said to himself, "It's like, how could you, do this without me? And now you're trying to steal all the meat." So Ekun decides to attack Ikoko. They have a fight, a big out brawl. going crazy, attacking each other. Well, Ekun wins, ends up destroying Ikoko. But Ekun had also been dealt several blows, which ended up being what took his life days later. That story, of course, Obuko ends up being successful and living out the rest of his life. But that story makes me think of the challenges that Ekun and Ikoko went through because of their anger, right? Now, they not only did bad things in their life, they let those manifest physically. And because of that, they ended up losing their lives, being, having their destinies cut short before it needed to be because of their actions, because of their lack of understanding, because of their inability to want to do good, right? And so we have to be extremely understanding that when anger starts in a simple way, right? If it starts simply by being frustrated at something and then it manifests into your words and then you want to physically take that out onto somebody else, there's a lot of challenges that come with that. So understand, anger, when fed, has the ability to consume its owner. Ashe. So now I've talked about the missteps. I talked about the ways that we can have challenges in life. So now let us uh, understand how we can move forward in life to find repairing, right? If we can repair ourselves to get ourselves back onto our destiny. Because nobody, unless people, I always try to understand this. Do people just want to destroy themselves and destroy their destiny? Is that a truth that they want to live by? My hope is that the answer is no. Nobody wants to deal with that process. We want to live a good life. We want to be happy. We want to find the things that will make us happy in life. That takes work, that takes time, that takes dedication. But I'm going to give you some tips on how we can bring back that balance. And this is really, this part is probably really mostly for devotees. Right? Now, if you're not a devotee and of our practice, you can still participate. Absolutely. You learn the ethics and philosophy through our temple services. This is the time that we teach. So we'll say that as a precursor number one. Now, the real number one is to remember the source. And the source for us is Olodumare, right? Let us remember Olodumare, who wants for us to have good character. So let us rely on Olodumare first. Number two, let us move into the act of daily morning prayers. For me, that is a time of reset, right? When I do morning prayers, it gets my mind ready in order to be prepared for the day. Whatever challenges I may have, whatever good things that may come, right? There's all of these reminders, all of these reminders. It reminds me to show gratitude. It reminds me to be thankful. It reminds me to continue to work towards the goals that I have for myself, the goals that I have for my family, right? Daily prayers are a good setup for the day. Next, something that I love to talk about within our temple, I did last week's sermon on it, is the idea of appeasing our Ori, right? Appeasing your Ori can be a very complicated process, yet it can be extremely simple at the same time. So those of you who are part of our study group on Patreon or um, are part of any other groups where I've discussed Ori, one of my most basic things I like to tell people first is start with cool water. Right? We have a verse of Ifa that we chant over cool water. We can use that cool water to cool our heads so that we can refresh and stabilize our spirit, right? Especially if we start to feel ourselves getting to that place of finding anger. If you're at work, step out, step to the side, go into the bathroom, Get some cool water. Alolo me, cool, peaceful water, pure, tranquil water. Chant the verse of Ifa, bless your water, use it to then cool your ori. Next, after thinking about our ori, right, use true Ifa knowledge. One of the biggest challenges that I know for folks who are interested in Ifa and Orisha is that there are many, many books that are interpretations of interpretations of interpretations. How do you know that the interpretation is correct? How do you know it will apply to you? Well, you look at a verse of Ifa and it talks to you about having children and all of these things, and you're focused on that, and you're a single man. Well, that may not apply to you because you need to have a spouse and probably need to have a home and income and that kind of stuff in order to make these other things happen. So start to think about, understand the stories or the essay Ifa. That's what we try to break down within our practice as practitioners. We look at the essay Ifa, we go over the story with our elders, we try to bring those things together to deepen our knowledge of Ifa and what Ifa expects from us, right? We look at the lives of the Orisha and the Irumole, right? Those who came to teach us. We try to understand what um, what important things they did and how they lived their life, right? That should guide who we are if we're practitioners. Next, we need to really dig in and understand those tenets of Ifa. Study and think about the concept of Iwa Puele, gentle character, Iwa Rere, good character. And then we also need to remember one of the most beautiful sayings within our practice is Iwa Lewa, character is beauty. Pardon my Yoruba. It is not great, but character is beauty is the statement I want us to think about. And one of the last areas I want to think about is find mentors, find people who represent who you want to be, right? I'm thankful to have someone like Olua Ifakolade from Idika Temple as my mentors, my Baba Ifa, the one who has been teaching me for these last few years, right? Because he represents the family man that I want to be like. You work hard, you take care of your family, you have things on your mind, and you work towards your goals, right? That's what we all need. Find the people to be our mentors in areas where we want to grow. Now, a couple of additional areas and things, especially if you're a practitioner, know know what your destiny is. Uncover that destiny. And as we know as practitioners, the way to get that information is through our itefa, through our initiation, right? So if we don't have that initiation and know which direction we need to go into, we're still a little bit lost and still need to work to find our way. But before we get to that point, right, before we get to that point, we can live by the philosophy and the ethics. That's going to set us up. That is going to set us up. That I promise, right? So those are just some of the ways that we can work towards improving, against any of those challenges to help mend that rope of life. What I want us to understand from this conversation today is that the rope of life, which equals our character and our destiny, is fragile. If we let anger fray the rope of life, we risk everything. But Ifa shows us that practicing patience, humility, and self control, we not only protect our Ori, but strengthen our connection to Olodumare. As I end this conversation today, I want you to understand that anger is a natural spark, but we decide whether to fan the flame, give it more oxygen, or simply to let it cool. When our anger rises inside of us, take a breath, call on your Ori, and think about the wisdom of Ifa. If you don't know the wisdom of Ifa, listen to the temple services. Find mentors, find people within the practice who are teaching how to live as devotees. It's important that we understand that we need to protect our own personal rope of life, our own good destiny, so that we do not continue walk off the path. We do not continue to find ourselves in a place where we are unhappy with the situation that we are in. Ashe. So let us end with this. May our Ori guide us. May our Iwa protect us. And may we walk gently, holding the rope of life with care. Aboru aboye aboshishe boato. If you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask or to reach out. We're excited this week to be celebrating our Odun Ifa, our Ifa festival in Miami. We're so excited. Temple members are coming together in order to celebrate Ifa, to celebrate our temple. So, if you are part of our groups and want to reach out and connect with us, please consider connecting with us. We appreciate all the support we get with those watching our videos, those who are making donations and whatnot. I hope that you have a wonderfully blessed week. Ashe.